I guess I was going to ask if I needed to use my phone, but I don't think there's an option there because it's really quick. How about Thunderhawk and Jeffrey? Oh, very awesome. That was awesome. Be sure to talk to Chris Ritchie about the names for Jeffrey's resume because he's going to need it. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to be with you guys over this weekend. It's going to be a ton of fun. We haven't gotten the chance to meet. My name is CJ. I'm a college student at Tennessee Tech. I serve with the 12th grade boys, and I absolutely love getting to hang out with them and do everything with them. It's a ton of fun. A little bit about me. I'm from Knoxville, and I love sports. I love playing football, ultimate frisbee. Shout out to Luke Taboo and
Amen, bro.
Ultimate Frisbee Intramural Champions of 2024. So yeah, it was a blast. But yeah, I love sports. Do you guys, just a question, you guys remember when it snowed a few weeks ago? It snowed like 6 inches, maybe? You guys remember that? Do you guys have a lot of fun in the snow? Do you guys do any of those things? Well, me and Nate Cope and Cameron and Brett and a bunch of other people, we went onto Tech's football field and we played some blizzard football. Now you guys might be wondering, what in the world is blizzard football? Well, it's kind of what you expect. It's basically backyard football, and we tackle each other. Like it's not two-hand touch, I'll tell you that much. And it's not really that gentle either. We were literally tackling each other in the snow, and obviously the snow gives a little cushion, which is a little fun. But it's not the most gentle thing that you think, right? Like getting tackled, and I'm pretty sure Nate actually blocked a field goal with his face when we were playing, and so he might have had a bruise for a little bit. But that doesn't sound super gentle, does it? I mean, even in the NFL, in today's like professional football league, like it's not that gentle. You see people get injured. You see commercials cut because they don't want you to see the replay of how much they get injured, and it really isn't that gentle in the NFL. In fact, you don't have to take my word for it. You can take Ann McKee, who is Boston University's director of CTE. CTE stands for Chronic Traumatic Encephalopathy. I had to read that word like 5 times before I got here so I can make sure I pronounce it right. And basically that means that your brain over time starts to degenerate because of injuries that you've had. And so a lot of NFL players, after they're getting tackled a bunch, some of them sort of develop this. And there was a study done by Ann McKee at Boston University in 2017, and she took 111 former NFL players' brains, and she had scanned them to see if there was any CTE. Now I'll just throw up a hand and guess, how many out of those 111 do you think had CTE?
98.
98? What else we got? 109. 111? One more?
112.
Correct, no. It's actually 110. 110 out of 111 former NFL players had CTE in this. And this was pretty recent too. This is 2017. And that's over 99% of those brains. Like, think about it. That's kind of bad. Like, that's a little absurd. And we can clearly see that the NFL is not nice when it comes to how you're doing physically, right? Like it's not that gentle, and it's probably not that kind to the weak either. But I'm not here just to give you guys random statistics about football or CTE. I want to discuss a little bit about the heart instead of the brain. And there's going to be this word tonight that's going to come up a lot, and I want you to keep this in mind. It's called dejected. And dejected basically means you're broken in spirit, you're broken on your inside, and you don't really know what to feel. You're feeling empty almost and unspirited. And you see, CTE affects those 99% of the NFL players, but there's this thing called sin that affects 100% of the world. That's me, that's you, it's everybody else that's in this room, everybody that's outside of this room in this world. Sin affects everybody. And sin is basically anything that we do that God tells us not to do, or anything that we don't do that God tells us to do. It is missing the mark of what God tells us to do. And it not only affects our lives, but it can sometimes affect others as well. And I'm willing to bet that most of us, we not only struggle with it, but we've been affected by it. We feel dejected. And maybe it wasn't something you specifically did, but it was maybe something that happened to you. And you feel scared, you feel fearful, you feel unspirited, you feel dejected. Which begs the question, well, what's the solution to feeling dejected? What's the solution to feeling dispirited? And today I want to answer that. And we'll be looking through the story of a man named Mephibosheth. And in this story, we'll see that he's scared, right? He's scared for his life. He's nervous about his future. He's feeling dejected. Now, to give some context to this story, I'm going to be reading out of 1 Samuel. You don't have to flip there because we're going to flip through like 3 different passages in the next 5 seconds. So, bear with me. But yeah, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 through 3. As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Keep in mind, this is just after David had defeated Goliath and scared the Philistines off. It says, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And so here we see the beautiful beginning of a friendship between Jonathan and David. And Jonathan not only makes the decision to be friends with David, but he makes a covenant. And covenant is basically a promise that is made before God. And so this covenant that they make is to show kindness to one another, to show the love of God to one another, because they realize that the center of everything is God. And they want to build their friendship on it. And so we're going to continue on in chapter 20, verses 14 through 17. And we're going to see how they continue to build on that friendship and continue to build on that covenant. So, chapter 20, verses 14 through 17. It says, if I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord, that I may not die. And do not cut off your steadfast love from my house. For when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord take vengeance on David's enemies. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as his own soul. And so here again, we see that he not only continues his friendship, but he makes another covenant. They continue to build their friendship on God and showing kindness to one another. They even take it a step further and make a covenant that says, even when I die, I want you to show kindness to my lineage, to my descendants, to my sons and my daughters. And they continue to build on this covenant, and this is the last passage before we get into the real stuff tonight. In chapter 23, verses 16 through 18. I should have got another stand for my life. All right. 23, verses 16 through 18. It says, and Jonathan, Saul's son, rose and went to David at Horesh, and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not harm you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father knows this. And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. They remained at Horesh, and Jonathan became home. And so, throughout this kind of time period, Saul is chasing after David because he's afraid that David is going to take over the throne. And now, I don't know about you, but if I were Jonathan in this scenario, I would kind of be a little upset that I wouldn't be getting the throne, right? Because back then, in this period of time, usually the eldest son, which is Jonathan, would take over the throne, right? It was kind of like a dynasty. But Jonathan recognizes more and more that David is going to be the next king. he realizes that David is the next chosen king of Israel by God. And so not only is Jonathan keeping his covenant with David, but he's also submitting to God's will and acknowledging here, he says, you will be the next king, and I will be next king. And so some time passes, and so far out of these three passages, we've seen that David and Jonathan's covenant, they made it and they built it on friendship and showing kindness and gentleness to one another. But the kindness of God, showing the kindness of God to one another. But then tragedy strikes. Jonathan and Saul are fighting the Philistines in battle, and Jonathan gets killed in battle. This leads us to our main character, Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son. And we'll see as we start going into this next passage, Mephibosheth he starts out feeling broken, feeling dispirited. He feels dejected. Our first impressions of him are that he's sad. He's scared. Like I said, he's scared for his life. He's dejected. And as we dive into 2 Samuel chapter 9, we're going to see how the kindness and gentleness that he's shown is going to change his life. So, now we'll get into 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 1 through 5. And David said, is there still anyone left in the house of Saul that I may show kindness to him, for Jonathan's sake? Now there was a servant of the house of Saul, whose name was Ziba. And they called him to David. And the king said to him, are you Ziba? And he said, I am your servant. And the king said, is there not still someone at the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him? Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in his feet. The king said to him, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, he is in the house of Machir, son of Ammiel, at Lo-debar. Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, son of Ammiel, at Lo-debar. And so right off the bat, we see that David asks a question. He asks, is there anyone in the house of Saul so that I may show him the kindness of God? Now, I want to point something out here. When there's a transition of kingship from dynasty to dynasty, like there is here from Saul to David, typically what they would do in this time is they would kill off the remaining descendants of the old dynasty. So David here, if he were going to, he would have killed off the rest of Jonathan's lineage, the rest of Saul's lineage, and it was so that there wouldn't be any more revolt, so that they wouldn't try and take over the new king. The new king would kill off the rest of the old king's dynasty, lineage, so that they wouldn't try and revolt and take over. But we see here that David flips the script. He's choosing to show the kindness of God to Saul's descendants because of the covenant he made with Jonathan. And it's also really interesting because it sounds a lot like something Jesus would do. David does the exact opposite of what the world thought he was going to do. Jesus likes to flip the script a lot too. Sometimes being kind means flipping the script, and sometimes that means getting uncomfortable. I remember a few weeks ago, college started back up. Raise your hand if you're a college student, by the way. Hey, let's give a round of applause to them. Okay, they're here on this weekend. They're here so college started up a few weeks ago, and there's this one class called Physical Metallurgy that I'm taking. It's about as fun as it sounds. And I knew nobody in that class, which is kind of weird because I'm a junior, and normally when you're in your junior and senior level classes, you kind of know what your group is, right? Like you kind of know who you're going to be taking classes with. You kind of know what the general group of people you're going to be with is. But I knew nobody in this class. So I sit down next to this random guy, and I end up talking it up with him. We laugh, we have a good time, make conversation. I get to know him a little bit. And then I asked him to coffee, and he was like, okay, sure. And so we go get coffee a few days later, and I get to know him more. He shares his story, I share my story. It's a beautiful time, beautiful way to build a friendship. And then out of nowhere, he kind of just asked me, he's like, hey, why'd you do this? And I'm like, do what? Like, did I just break some social norm that I didn't know? I was a little scared. And he's like, no, why'd you take me out to coffee? Like, why'd you do this? I was like, oh, well, I just wanted to get to know you more, man. Like, I wanted to, build our friendship. I wanted to hear your story and just connect with you. And I was like, well, why do you ask? And he said, well, nobody's really ever done that for me before. And it just kind of hit me there, like, oh, that was really sweet of him to say, but not only that, like, I wonder how many people we interact with on a daily basis that are like that, that don't really have a community, and let alone a gospel-rooted community. And so sometimes showing the kindness of God means getting a little uncomfortable. Sometimes maybe it'll mean flipping the script and going against what the world says. But man, is it worth it, right? Man, is it worth it? Because who knows, maybe a semester or two down the road, he'll be serving at the gathering, or maybe he'll be serving here with you guys, or maybe he'll be serving on Sunday mornings volunteering, and he'll be getting plugged into community. I don't know. And I don't say that to make myself sound like a kind of egotistical super Christian or anything, but at the same time, the kindness and gentleness of God can change lives. And I know it's changed my life. And I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room who's willing to say that too. Ask your small group leaders. They would love nothing more than to share that with you as well. But here we see David flipping the script as well. We see him flipping the script, go against what the world says. We see him show kindness. So let's keep reading. 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 6 through 8. It says, and Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. That basically means reverence. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, behold, I am your servant. And David said to him, do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. And I will restore to you all of the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage and said, what is your servant that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I? And isn't that beautiful? Here we see Mephibosheth speak for the first time, and keep in mind, he's probably scared out of his mind. I mean, if you think about it, your grandfather, Saul, was trying to kill this man, right? And if Mephibosheth knows this thing about how they would typically kill off the rest of the dynasty, he's probably scared out of his mind when David calls him and he's like, hey, I want you to come to my kingdom. I want you to come here right now. And he's also come from this place called Lodabar, and I looked it up a little bit and researched it. And basically, the meaning for that is no word or no thing. And so this place that Mephibosheth is coming from, it's a pretty desolate place. Like it's nothing. And so Mephibosheth here he's feeling scared. He's fearful for his life, right? Because he's probably thinking David's going to kill him. He's scared. He's fearful. He's dejected. And so we'll just say that he probably wasn't super excited when David called him out to personally see him. And despite what Mephibosheth is feeling, what do we see David promise to do? He promises to show kindness. And he goes about it by being gentle. Like I said, Mephibosheth is probably scared out of his mind right now, fearful for his life. And the last thing he wants is an angry king who's about to kill him. But Mephibosheth wasn't expecting what David did. You see, David, I kind of picture it like this. David calmly sits down, right? So and he starts talking to Mephibosheth, right? Like he lowers himself and is gentle, right? Like he's not angry. He doesn't blow up or anything, because that's probably the last thing that Mephibosheth wants, right? And he calmly told Mephibosheth about the covenant he made with Jonathan to show him the kindness of God. And I don't really think it was just the what part of what David said that got Mephibosheth's attention, but I also think it was kind of how. And, for example, here, someone tell me 2 + 2 is 5. That's outrageous. That is absurd. You are wrong. Jim, we got to send her back to school right now. Get her back on the bus. Get her back on the bus right now. Is that really gentle? Is that really gentle? No. Tell me 2 + 2 is 5. Okay, I disagree with you. But I would like to see why you think that. You guys see the difference? I know that's kind of a silly example, but you guys see the difference there. I think there's a deeper meaning behind it, because when we're gentle rather than angry and inconsiderate, we consider the relationship with that person more than we do about being right or making ourselves look good. And we see that that's what David does here. He could have made himself look good. He could have said, oh yeah, I made a covenant with your dad Jonathan, and I'm just doing it just to look good, make my kingdom look good, make my name sound good across the way. But he doesn't do that, because he is about the relationship with Mephibosheth rather than he is about being right.
Say it louder. Say that louder.
He is more about the relationship with Mephibosheth than he is about being right or making himself look good. And believe it or not, we all crave relationships, right? God designed us to be that way. He designed us for community, to be there for one another as brothers and sisters in Christ. And most importantly, he designed us to be in relationship with him. And the only way that we can recognize that is from other believers as well, through the Word, through reading. And here we see that Mephibosheth sees it because he is shown the kindness and gentleness of God. The kindness and gentleness of God changes lives. The tone that you use when you're talking to a friend at school, the attitude that you have when you're talking to your parents. I know sometimes they can get a little annoying, but trust me, when you are gentle with them, you're considering the relationship with them more than you are about being right. Do you have an attitude when you're talking to people? I know sometimes I've messed up and I've not been gentle, and sometimes it's gotten ugly. But like we said, gentleness leads to considering those relationships. And that's what we see David do. We see him consider the relationship he wants to have with Mephibosheth, and he speaks softly and gently. And remember, Mephibosheth was coming from a place of fear and brokenness. He was feeling dejected. And as we continue to read, we're going to see how the kindness and gentleness that he shows, the kindness and gentleness of God, we'll continue to see how it is changing Mephibosheth's life. Let's keep reading. 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. It says, Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson. That's Mephibosheth. And you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, According to all that my Lord has commanded, so will your servant do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table, like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and who lived in Ziba's house, who lived with Mephibosheth's servants. And so Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, where he always ate at the king's table. Now he was lame in both his feet. What an ending, right? I mean, talk about a whole new world for Mephibosheth, right? At the beginning of the story, we see that he's scared for his life, right? He's broken and crushed in spirit. He's dejected. But after he's shown the kindness and gentleness of God, he's eating at the king's table, right? He's filled with joy that he's able to eat at the king's table and treated like one of his sons. And not only is he just treated like one of his sons, I looked it up, he is treated like one of the eldest sons. Which, that's just so cool, right? Because like the eldest sons, they have more respect. And so he's not only eating and being treated like one of his sons, but he's treated as one of his eldest sons too. And the only way he could have eaten at the king's table was because David invited him. And the only way David could have done that was because he himself had the kindness and gentleness of God in him. You know, there's one piece of information that I'm really excited to give you guys. And how it starts is there's two phrases in here that describe Mephibosheth, one in the beginning and one in the end. And it says, he was lame in his feet. I want us to look at that. In verse 3, it says, now he was lame in his feet. Something cool about this is that the Hebrew word for lame or crippled, the Hebrew word in this is pronounced naked. And it means broken and lame and crushed in spirit. It means, you guessed it, dejected. There's that word. So not only is Mephibosheth broken in his feet, but he's also crushed in spirit. He's broken. So now let's take a look at the end of the story. The very last thing it says, now he was lame in both his feet. Now this Hebrew word is pronounced paseach, and this one means that he was only lame in his feet. So how cool is that? That at the beginning of the story, we see that he's not only crushed in his feet, but he's crushed, he's broken in spirit. And after he's shown the kindness and gentleness of God, he's only broken in his feet. How amazing is that? That the kindness and gentleness of God can change someone in that way. And whether you have felt dejected, whether it's from your own sin, or maybe something someone has done to you, or maybe it's from pain, from suffering, from loss, however you're feeling dejected, God wants to show you his kindness and gentleness. And man, when you receive it, it's contagious, right? Later on, we won't go over this, but in 2 Samuel chapter 19, we see Mephibosheth and Ziba pop up again. Except Ziba has betrayed Mephibosheth, but Mephibosheth shows kindness to him. Mephibosheth gives him all of the land that we just read about David giving to Mephibosheth. He gives Ziba all the land, even after Ziba betrayed him. Oh, it sounds like a lot like someone else in the Bible, doesn't it? David and Mephibosheth didn't have the New Testament at the time, but the New Testament tells us a lot about Jesus and his ministry and what he did. You see, the sin in our lives can lead to us feeling dejected. And if we're not careful, we can start to believe the lies that the enemy tells us. We can start to believe that dejection is never going to go away, that we are always going to be scared and fearful and dispirited and crushed in spirit, and that there's no hope for us. Or maybe he'll say that you can fix it on your own, that you can fix it with things of the world, that you can fix it all by yourself. But guys, I want to let you know that that is a lie from the devil. Only Jesus can fix. Only Jesus can heal us. Only Jesus can heal us from that dejection, because God created us to be in relationship with him. And when we sinned, we broke that relationship with him. When we sinned, we separated ourselves from him, and that caused dejection in our lives. And I want to tell you that trying to fix it by yourself is not going to work. Trying to fix it with things of the world is not going to work. Only Jesus can heal you. Only Jesus can help you. Because think about this. How kind do you have to be to go to a cross and die for the world's sins? And how gentle do you have to be to when he's getting spit on, when he's getting thrown nasty comments at, when he's getting beaten? How much gentleness does he have to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do? And when we experience the kindness and gentleness of God, we're left with nothing to do but respond. And so that's my question for you tonight, is how will you respond? Whether you've experienced the kindness and gentleness of God, or whether you're wanting to experience that for the first time, I want to ask you, what is your response to God's invitation? With every head bowed and every eye closed. Today we've talked about the kindness and gentleness of God. We talked about how it changes lives. How when we feel dejected, that kindness and gentleness that He shows us can heal us. Heal Mephibosheth. It changed Mephibosheth. So I just want you to think right now, in this moment, what is your next step? Think about that. Pray about it. What is God stirring inside you? If you're a believer in this room, how can you show the kindness and gentleness of God? Who can you show it to? Is there someone that comes to mind? If you had not experienced the kindness and gentleness of God, where would you be? Did you remember a time where someone showed that kindness and gentleness to you? Maybe it was multiple people. And then is there someone who you need to show the kindness and gentleness of God to right now? Maybe you're here and you don't really understand what a relationship with God looks like. Maybe you're feeling dejected. And you want to know what this kindness and gentleness of God is all about. If that's you, I just want you to know we've got some awesome small group leaders. We've got some awesome leaders here. We've got Jim, we've got Chris. We have tons of people in this room who would love nothing more than to walk you through what that looks like. Whatever it is, I just pray that you would take your next step. And that as we continue this look at the fruits of the Spirit this weekend, that you would let God stir something inside of your hearts that maybe you've never experienced before. Let's pray. God, man, we love you. We are so thankful for the kindness and gentleness that you've shown us. Thank you for helping us when we feel dejected, when we feel scared, crushed in spirit. God, you are there for us. And all we got to do is just lean on. Lord, we thank you for that. Lord, I pray that as we go about this weekend talking about the fruits of the Spirit, Lord, I pray that you would fill this room with your Spirit as we are learning more about you and what it looks like to be like you. Lord, I pray that as we leave this weekend as well, that we would walk out the fruits of the Spirit, Lord. Pray that we would know that we can lean on you no matter what, and that you are always offering that kindness and that gentleness. We love you. We thank you for your Son. It's in the name we pray.